Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Lettermen Row. It is post-spring. Spring is officially in the books for Ohio State. Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I am just Spencer Holbrook. We are going to talk in the post-spring edition of Lettermen Row. Spring football's over, man. It was a blur, Mick, and they're not going to be throwing the football for a little while in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where you can throw the football. Where I did throw the football over the weekend was over at biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. That's right, biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. It's from the Big Game Football Factory. You saw the Buckeyes play with this Nike football in the spring game. You can own it today. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. It's got this premium leather, the Nike fractal swoosh. It commemorates the Buckeyes college football playoff win in the national championship game, and it's got the Buckeyes logo on it. It is a great piece. I actually tossed it around. You know why? Because ball security is job security. I trust myself to catch everything, so I was chucking this thing around a little bit because it didn't get dirty because I didn't drop the pigskin. So I didn't need to worry about it getting dirty. But I was throwing it around the yard a little bit on Saturday after the spring game. Mick, how are you doing? Have you gotten your paws on one of these biggameusa.com/Buckeyes authentic Ohio State national championship footballs?
I have not. I have another football around here commemorating the national championship that they're not currently a sponsor of the show, so I'm not going to bring it up. But they did sponsor us at one point, and they graciously sent us a football for the work that we did there. So I'm happy to have that behind us. I'm doing good, man. Just been getting articles in, doing our typical daily duties at Lettermen Row. I do want to shout out my guy Thad Harrison, who stopped me at the gym the other day and said, "Hey, he had stopped me previously and talked about Lettermen Row, and then he stopped me again yesterday. And he said, 'Hey, you didn't shout me out on the show after Spencer shouted out Terry from Grove City.' I said, 'You know what, Thad? Next time we get on the show, I will shout you out.' So before we get into rolling, thank you, Thad, for listening. Thanks for everybody that listens. If you are listening and you aren't subscribed to Lettermen Row, $1 for your first 7 days. Get in there, get in the Lettermen Lounge, talk to us, chat with us, and read the content. We know what you guys are enjoying, and we're trying to continue to bring you guys good content.
Look, and we tell you people all this all the time. If you see us out in the wild, in the wilderness, in the open, and you talk to us about watching Lettermen Row, we will shout you out on this show. We shout out Terry. We got Thad. If you see us, if you talk to us, you're getting a shout out on Lettermen Row. That's just the bottom line. So let's talk about spring ball, Mick, because it's in the books. We haven't recorded since the spring game, just because I went to Washington, D.C. for the White House celebration with the Buckeyes. Pretty crazy turn and burn. I was only in D.C. for less than 24 hours. I came back to the great state of Ohio, got out of the swamp and back into the greatest state in the union. It was a good time, but we're not here to talk about the White House visit because really it was just the Buckeyes get honored. They go into the Oval Office, they take their pictures, they shake hands, and then they go home. That's really all that happened. I think they saw the Lincoln Memorial too. Happened to be on the anniversary of Lincoln being shot. Which I thought was interesting, like the death anniversary of Lincoln. Ohio State went to the Lincoln Memorial. And then I ended up in Ford's Theater that day too. So it's kind of, a little odd, but whatever. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Mick. We are here to talk about spring ball. I wrote on lettermenrow.com on Thursday. There are 7 Buckeyes. It was originally 6. Then I realized I left off Bo Jackson, which I just couldn't do. And so there's 7 Buckeyes in there that I think kind of helped their lot with the program in their first spring and kind of improved their standing on the depth chart. So let's talk about them. Of the 7 that I listed there, I know you read the story because you don't miss a thing over at lettermenrow.com. Nick, you are the best person on our website. What did you learn, and who kind of caught your eye as somebody who made the list of the 7 Buckeyes freshmen in their first springs who kind of impressed?
Yeah, Spencer wanted the flattery method to tee me up, and I'll flatter a few of these guys. So when we talk about the early enrollee freshmen, I'll start with Jake Cook. Honestly, we talked about him in our spring game, our post spring game video, and just seeing him with the second team between Ian Moore and Josh Padilla, 2 guys that Ohio State really likes. To see him in that kind of mix, I think there's been a lot of positive buzz about him with current offensive linemen, like guys that have just been able to watch practice. So I'll shout out Jake Cook as my first early enrollee freshman, just coming from a guy that had to earn an offer at camp. And now he was seemingly running with the second team offense when it comes to this spring. So hat tip to Jake for what he's done this spring.
Yeah, I mean, pretty remarkable, right? Like, just not a guy. I mean, let's just be honest, not a guy that I expected to see in the 2 deep at the beginning of spring practice. Just flat out not on my radar. I think he's the number 481 player in his class, or 418. He was the number 34 interior offensive lineman. He was the number 15 player in the state of Ohio. He worked his tail off to get that offer to Ohio State. He ended up getting an offer. He commits to the Buckeyes. Now he joins the class. by signing with the team, comes in the first spring and just becomes like a little bit of a mauler. Just remarkable little bit of a career progression already for Jake Cook. I think he has an incredibly bright future at Ohio State. And so I think that it was worth just putting him in there like second team guard. You know, there's a couple of other guys who are more veteran than him who could probably be in that second team guard role. They're not, because Jake Cook is. And so a complete hat tip to Jake Cook. We're not going to spend a lot of time, Mick, talking about Devin Sanchez and Quincy Porter. They're the 2 5-stars not named Tavian St. Clair in this class. And like, to be honest, like we expected them to do this spring. We expected Quincy Porter to come in and push for playing time as a former 5-star who plays on an outside wide receiver position that, you know, as many slot receivers as Ohio State has, they might be a little thin there on the outside. And so I think Quincy could play a little bit this year. And I think that he proved that in his first spring. And then Devin, I mean, we've gushed about Devin Sanchez since he committed to Ohio State, way before you even worked for the site. So we're not going to spend a lot of time like just gushing over those two, because this is kind of what we expected out of them, in all honesty. One of the guys that I think is worthy of some praise, though, is Zion Grady, the defensive end. We didn't really see Zion do a whole lot that like, oh my gosh, this guy could be a superstar for Ohio State as a freshman. The number 104 overall player, the number 12 edge, and the number 6 player in the state of Alabama. But I asked Ryan Day, so here's the deal. We were in a press conference, and I believe Stefan Krajnik from Cleveland.com asked Ryan Day, was called on right before me and asked Ryan Day about his defensive tackle depth, which was like the number one thing that I wanted to learn from Ryan Day in that press conference. And I wanted to learn about the defensive tackles, and then I was going to try to sneak a follow-up in about the ends. So I'm glad that Stefan asked Ryan Day about the tackles, because then I was able to follow it up and say, yeah, Ryan, like along the same lines, defensive end, how do you feel like those guys are right now? He goes into a little bit of a diatribe about the defensive ends, you know, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Logan George, the Idaho State transfer, and CJ Hicks. And then all of a sudden he pulls out this and he says, I've been impressed with Zion Grady as a young player. I think that if he can learn and grow and get better and not get caught up in being a freshman and kind of flatlining, I think he can help us as a freshman, which would be great. Nobody asked him about Zion Grady, and he brought him up on his own. So it's not like we saw Zion do a lot, but the fact that the head coach of the football program is bringing him up unprompted, like you've kind of got to say like, okay, he's obviously on the mind of Ryan Day in the middle of a press conference in the middle of spring. He didn't do anything to hinder himself in the back half of spring. And so I come away thinking that there's a chance that he could help this team from a depth standpoint as a freshman, even though that's a pretty difficult ask.
Yeah, I when you just saw Zion Grady walk around at any point this spring, he looked like somebody that's already been in the program for a year or two. He's just a massive human being for a defensive end. And like you said, they've got good depth there. Obviously, we can talk about later if we want the transfer portal guys and how they might be pursuing another edge. But you have a handful of guys up there at the top. But there's no real reason why Zion Grady can't push for second team minutes, third team minutes. And it sounds like that's what Ryan Day was kind of hinting at too when you asked him this question. And if we'll keep it along the same lines and kind of keep rolling with the freshman, the other guy I want to bring up is somebody that we saw a lot in the spring. And admittedly, I didn't get to see his touchdown in the game because I was kind of in the photo den when we were working on some stuff in the second half. But Bo Jackson, every time we watched the practice, every time we watched the scrimmage, he looked good to me. Sounds like he had another good spring game. I don't know what it is, but there's a certain play, and Spencer knows what I'm talking about, where Austin Sarabeld was involved on it both times. They kind of pull him around, and Bo scored, I believe, a couple touchdowns in practice that we had seen. I don't know if that was the play that he scored on in the game, but still, every time we watched him in practice or in a scrimmage, he flashed. So good to see him kind of translate that into the game situation as well.
Man, Bo looks like he had some burst to him, and he looks pretty explosive. Like he gets through the offensive line or through the defensive line, that first level of the defense, and he is gone. I was super impressed with Bo in the spring game. I was impressed with Bo on Student Appreciation Day. I think he's got a really bright future. And, I mean, I'm just here to tell you, like, the things I've heard from some high-level Ohio State sources tell me that they're very excited about him as well. Like, this is not a guy that's just like, hey, could come in, you know, have 20 carries as a freshman, a la James Peoples last year, which James's circumstances were different. He couldn't get carries because of Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I think there's a chance that Bo could get a much better workload in his freshman season. I think like Dallin Hayden in 2022, which seems like forever ago and a blast from the past at this point. But like Dallin was really good as a freshman. And when they had an injury in the running back room, either to Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams, they were able to call on Dallin and like carry the load, be the bell cow. I think and you don't want this to happen, but like if there's any sort of injury in that running back room, you feel really good about having Bo Jackson as a true freshman who can step in and have 17 carries in the game for 89 yards and a touchdown against Purdue, or, and something like that. And so I think that is just something to know, is like Ohio State's very excited about what Bo Jackson did as a true freshman in the spring. And I think as long as that translates into summer and into training camp, you could see a really good freshman year that kind of elevates him into a superstar role in his second year.
Yeah, and obviously, like we talked about last year with James Peebles, you have Travion Henderson, you have Quinshon Judkins that are like kind of clogging up the top two spots. But like if Bo plays, he's still going to have to play over a couple of talented guys. James Peebles got kind of held out, didn't play a ton in the spring game because of like they already kind of know what they're getting out of him. CJ Donaldson had that drive there where he scored the touchdown, and he looked like, oh, CJ Donaldson might be able to be an impact guy for Ohio State. So Bo's going to get minutes over those guys. Like that's a very positive thing for Bo's development. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a couple other guys, and you can kind of get into it if you want to keep on the defensive line, where they need other positive developments for freshmen just to make sure they continue to have depth. And you already talked about Zion Grady, but there was another defensive lineman on that list that I know that you've really liked watching this spring.
Yeah, Jarquez Carter just stands out. There's not really much else to say. He looks the part. He looks bigger than the 270 that he's listed at. I think he plays more around 285, 290 at this point. Now that he's been in the weight room for a little while with Coach Mick, I just really like the way he's built, the way he looks, the way he goes about his business. He was on the practice field a little bit after practice when we would see him getting some extra work in. I think he takes it seriously. He's got a good approach. He's also from Florida, and I naturally think that the defensive tackles from the South are just a little different, to be completely honest. Nothing against like defensive tackles from anywhere else, but like they just kind of look different, man. They kind of move different. They're just kind of athletic freaks. And I think Jarquez has a little bit of that to his game. I don't know how much he's going to actually help this team as a freshman, but I also didn't know how much Tyleik Williams was going to help Ohio State as a freshman, and he looked good his freshman year. And then Edric Houston as a freshman looked pretty good in his first year, set himself up to be a starter this year. And I mean, Ryan Day just keeps beating the drum that this team needs defensive tackle help. Well, maybe that comes in the form of a true freshman who has a really good summer and puts it all together after a decent spring. I don't think he was like the best freshman on the field for Ohio State this spring, but he did enough where if he has, 6 tackles against Grambling and sets himself up to play more against Ohio, and then sets himself up to have a decent game at Washington, his first ever road game, I would just be like, yeah, that kind of makes sense from what we saw in just the way he approaches the game, in his first spring at Ohio State. So I guess he's probably the most under the radar of all those guys, other than maybe Fahim Delane, because I think he's the last one who's in that story. Just because I think it's harder to get on the field as a safety as a true freshman. But man, like Jarquez has the right build, has the right frame, has the right mindset, kind of checks the boxes there. And then from there, it's kind of want to and execution. So if he can do that, there's no reason he can't play.
Yeah, when you look at Jarquez Carter's senior stats, he put up large numbers. And even if he can't impact a great ton in the run game this year, he's a guy that's going to be able to provide a pass rushing like presence from the interior, which is a big thing. And honestly, I don't know if Caden McDonald is the guy that's going to provide that. So maybe he can slide in and play some one on second or third downs when you say, hey, we got a second and 13. Maybe slide Jarquez Carter in, take Caden McDonald off the field, and we have now the guy that can bring a little bit more interior pass rush. Overall, like a lot of those freshmen were impressive. There was a lot of other guys that were impressive. If we're just going full roster now, unlock and unload the whole thing, I would go back to Austin Sarabot, who I mentioned earlier, who it was like, oh, where's he going to play? Is he going to play right guard or left guard, right tackle? Well, he's just going to play. I don't know where it is exactly right now, but after what we saw this spring, like Austin Sarabot's going to play. He was an Iron Buckeye. He did all the work. Whenever he was in this spring, when we were watching the practice or scrimmages, he was always a guy that was setting up a block for a big play. So he's going to play on the field somewhere. I don't know exactly, but that's probably my offensive MVP of the spring would probably be Austin Sarabot from what we saw.
I guess I'll just take one. We can get out of here. So, because we're going to break down this spring for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll hop into position previews for the summer here in April or in May. So I'll go with somebody who I just don't think gets talked about nearly enough, and I've started to beat the drum for this guy more and more on the defensive side. Not going to be a starter, I don't think. I think you know exactly where I'm going with this. Like Payton Pierce looks so good. I think if he's good enough, you can see a world in which Arvell Reese can do some things off the edge, or Sonny Styles can do some things off the edge that they really liked doing in the college football playoff with Sonny Styles. And like flip on the Indiana game, watch what they did with Sonny where they were blitzing him. Watch what they did with Cody Simon where they were blitzing him. That was made possible because they had a third linebacker in Arvell Reese who could help play linebacker. And so if you have Payton Pierce who can help you play linebacker, then you can toy with those other two linebackers as edge rushers or as they're athletic freaks who can drop back into pass coverage. Like, I really like what Payton Pierce could open for this defense. I'm not saying that he's going to, but I'm saying like he ran the alley really well and had a tackle for loss after shedding a block that I would just like, you cannot teach that. I guess you can, but like that's instinct, that's want to, that's a little bit of opening a can, if you know what I'm saying? Like he's kind of violent and he kind of doesn't care, plays a little reckless. You really like that out of a linebacker. I think James Laurinaitis really likes that because I'm pretty sure he watches it, sees a little bit of himself in those kind of linebackers. I just really like what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing out of Payton Pierce right now, making me think that he's going to be a big part of this defense, even if he's not going to start. So that's not really an MVP. Like I would agree, Austin Servo could be classified as the MVP of the spring on the offensive side. The defensive side, it's not going to be Payton Pierce. But, man, like you want to talk about a guy who just made huge strides and should be in the conversation every time you talk about this Ohio State defense from now until August 31st. I think it's going to be Payton Pierce.
Yeah, and obviously Matt Patricia's going to do unique things. He's going to bring his own defense to Columbus, but it's probably still going to have a similar like 4-3, 4-3, 4-2 type of base to it. But there's a world where if you really start going and we want to get Payton Pierce on the field, hey, let's go something like a 3-3, like just kind of 3-3 stack and move one of these guys around. You get Sonny, you get Arvell, these outside linebackers, you put Payton in the middle, and then you're still able to get Edric Houston, Caden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson on the defensive line, and then one of Sonny or Arvell is kind of coming up on the line of scrimmage or just blitzing. Like there's different things they can do to get that combination of 6 players or those 3 linebackers on the field. Because I think Payton Pierce has showed this spring that he needs to be on the field to some extent, whether that's and just rotate again with Arvell Reese, whether that's moving Arvell Reese closer to the line of scrimmage from time to time. Like he's going to be able to he's going to be able to do that. So I was really impressed by Payton Pierce this spring, just like how you mentioned there.
Yeah. So I think that's where we can end it because we just naming some guys who we think are going to, have improved themselves, I guess, in spring practice. We're going to be back on Friday to talk a lot more, maybe a little bit of spring ball, but a lot of recruiting. Who knows? Maybe we even get somebody on, come hang out with us, talk recruiting with Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. That's the recruiting guy right there. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Right now, go to LettermenRow.com, get all of this coverage for $1 for your first 7 days, but also go to Rowback.com right there, the little dog. That's Rowback. X on 3. You see it around there. Use the code Letterman20 for 20% off. That's a generous 20% off. Rowback, you know him. You love him by now. That's best fit, best feel. Mick Walker is finally going to get himself some Rowback gear. He's finally going to do it, folks, and he's never going to look back. The Hezzy Performance hoodie, my favorite thing in my closet, bar none, not even close. I wear it every single time I would leave this house because I have too many of them. Not too many of them. You can never have too many of them, but, I've got a lot of them. That's Letterman20 for 20% off, a generous 20% off your first order over at Rowback. That's RHOBACK.com. Use code Letterman20 for 20% off your first order, and then go to LettermenRow.com right now where you can get $1 for your first 7 days to get all the mixed coverage, all of AG, Alex Blattman's coverage, and all of my coverage over at LettermenRow.com. We'll see you guys over there. We'll see you guys back here on this YouTube channel for another video breaking down the Buckeyes on Friday.